The doctor asked me to sit still, and then he handed me a thing that looked a bit like a plug and asked me to put it over my belly button. Well, I did that, and then he attached a tube to the plug and switched on a machine. There was a whooshing sound. For a while, nothing happened, but then I started to feel my belly swelling up. "You'll feel your belly swelling up," the doctor said. "Yes," I said. It felt a bit like having a kind of tight belt on, or maybe having a bit too much to eat. "It may feel a bit like having a tight belt on or having a bit too much to eat," he said. "Yes," I said. And I went on swelling up, and I started to feel light, as if I wasn't sitting so heavily in the chair, and the machine went on making the whooshing sound. Then, very slowly, very gently, I found myself lifting off the chair. "Were you expecting this to happen?" I said. "Oh, yes and no," the doctor said. "Well, what happens when it's a no?" I said. "Oh, sometimes it leaks," he said. "I'm in the air," I said. "Yes," he said. "I was floating round the room." "Oh," he said. "Did I weigh you?" "No," I said. "Oh, well, it's a bit late now," he said. "Yes," I said. I wouldn't know how to come down from up here and stand on the scales." "What's your date of birth?" he said. The window was open. I looked out. I don't know if it was because I looked, or if it was because of the way the wind was blowing, but I found myself drifting towards the window. "I think I'm floating out of the window," I said. "What did you say was your date of birth?" he said. "I'm floating out of the window," I said. "Is it the 4th of June, 19... I didn't catch the rest. I was out the window, just too far off. Too far away. Fast food. A hamburger sat in a hamburger bar waiting to be fried. "No one's going to put me," it said, "into anyone's inside. 'Cause eating me is cruel, eating me is murder. You can't catch me, I'm the speedy hamburger." So up jumped the hamburger and ran out of the bar. "Hey, come back here," said the hamburger cook. "You won't get very far." But Hamburger rolled out of the door and off down the street. Who do you think was the first person Hamburger happened to meet? Lollipop Lady was walking home with a lollipop in her hand. "Get out of the way," Hamburger yelled. "I'm the fastest in the land." "Catch that hamburger," the cook yelled out. So Lollipop Lady turned and gave Hamburger a shout. "Hey, little Hamburger, you can't run away." But as Hamburger rushed past, he just had time to say, "Eating me is cruel, eating me is murder. You can't catch me, I'm the speedy hamburger." Hamburger cook and Lollipop Lady ran off down the street. And who do you think was the next person Hamburger happened to meet? Lemonade Boy with lemonade bottles was loading up the van when Hamburger rushed past shouting, "I'm the fastest in the land." "Catch that hamburger," said Hamburger cook. "It's trying to run away. We're going to catch the little..." Lollipop Lady began to say. "I'll catch it," said Lemonade Boy. "I'm really fast." But just then he heard Hamburger shout as it went hurtling past. "Eating me is cruel, eating me is murder. You can't catch me, I'm the speedy hamburger." So Hamburger cook and Lollipop Lady, followed by Lemonade Boy, ran off up the street shouting, "Hamburger, ahoy!" And Hamburger rolled and Hamburger ran and Hamburger couldn't be caught. And Hamburger rolled and Hamburger ran right into an airport. "Stop right there," said security guard. "Where do you think you're trying to go?" "I'm just a little hamburger," it said, "and I don't know where to go." For a moment it stood in front of the guard and it darted past. "You won't catch me," it shouted. "You can't run very fast. Eating me is cruel, eating me is murder. You can't catch me, I'm the speedy hamburger." Hamburger rolled through the terminal and out onto the runway. It ran up to a plane to Jamaica that was waiting to get away. The aeroplane took off and flew into the air, and all the people heard something as they were standing there. "Eating me is cruel, eating me is murder. You can't catch me, I'm the speedy hamburger." Losing things. I hate losing things. So I think, what if there's a place somewhere where everything you ever lost goes. Somehow or other, all those things you ever lost found their way there, to this place. Maybe there's a huge hall somewhere with hundreds and hundreds of doors, and one of the doors has got your name on it. I see myself going to this huge hall one day. The way in is not very big, but once you get inside, it's enormous. It's cold and dark and damp, and there are thousands of people there, and they're all looking for the door that belongs to them, the door with their name on it. Everyone is asking everyone else, hey, have you seen my door? What's your name? And people are saying things like, yeah, no, I think I saw it over there, or, don't bother me, I'm looking for mine. So I begin to look, and I walk about, and I ask someone, excuse me, have you seen my door? Yeah, I think it's over there, she says. So I go over there, but it isn't. So I go on wandering around the big hall. I ask someone, excuse me, have you seen my door? And someone says, yeah, up the spiral stair, it's on the second floor. On the way there, someone stops and says, have you seen my door? And I say, no, I haven't, sorry. I climb the spiral stair onto the second floor, but my door isn't there either. So I go on, wandering around the big hall. And someone comes up to me and says, have you seen my door? Have you seen mine, I say. Yeah, it's at the end, by the steel doors. And it is. It's my door. It's got my name on it. I knock on the door. Who's there? Me. We were expecting you. The bolts draw back. The door opens, and two old people let me in and shut the door behind me. It's all here, one of them says. It's all here, the other one says. And they're right. There's my penknife from Switzerland that I lost when I was 12. The old watch I lost in my car accident. My blue anorak with the hood that I left on a railway station in Paris. Yeah, my round gold sunglasses that I once wore in a play to make me look as if I was blind. The football that was a birthday present that I lost on the same day I got it over a wall in the burnt-out church. They're all there, yeah. A black and white and green towel, a Moroccan leather wallet. They're all here, says one of the old people. They're all here, says the other. Have you got a bag to take them away in? Says one. Here's a bag to take them away in, says the other. So I fill up the bag with all the things that I've ever lost until the shelves are empty. Come back and see us any time, says one. Come back and see us, says the other. You know where we are now, don't you? Says one. You know where we are, says the other. And they shut the door. I hear the locks and bolts on the door. And I walk away into the crowd, into the huge hall. And everyone is still walking around, asking everyone else, do you know where my door is? A tall man with the steering wheel in his hand says to me, you seen my door, have you? No, I say, no. No, I don't expect you have, he says. I look round to see if I can remember where my door was. It's out of sight. Too many people are in the way, so I say to myself, one day I'll try and find my way back there. But something tells me, some little voice in my head says, I bet you'll never ever find that door again. You've had the only chance you'll ever have. So I make my way out of that huge dark hall with the thousands and thousands of doors and the thousands of people, and I hurry home with my bag, and I get back to my room, and I spread out on the floor all those things that I'd lost and I've now got back again. And that makes me very happy. Yeah! Kaleidoscope. It's said that the great emperor of all emperors called for his wisest and cleverest people and told them to go away for 10 years to invent useful things. Whoever could invent the most useful thing of all would win 3,500 chocolate biscuits. 10 years later, there was a queue outside the palace of the great emperor of all emperors. One by one, people were asked in to show their invention to the great emperor of all emperors. One woman had invented windscreen wipers for spectacles. "Excellent," said the great emperor. "Very useful for when it's raining, but not a prize winner, I'm afraid." One man had invented square tomatoes. "Very good," said the great emperor. "Very useful for putting tomatoes in boxes, but not a prize winner, I'm afraid." One woman had invented a pencil that sharpened itself. "I like it," said the great emperor. "Very useful when you're too tired to use a pencil sharpener, but not a prize winner, I'm afraid." And one man had invented the kaleidoscope. "What's this?" said the great emperor. "You look through it," said the man. "Oh, it's a telescope, is it? Well, I'm afraid telescopes have already been invented. Hard luck. Goodbye. Next." "It's not a telescope," said the man, "but you do look through it." "Well, what's the point of looking through something that looks like a telescope but isn't a telescope?" said the great emperor. "You look through it, then you twist it and move it, and before you know what's what, you find yourself saying, 'Ooh!' Or on another day you might look through it, twist it and move it, and you could find yourself saying, 'Ah!' And I have to tell you this, sometimes people find themselves saying both 'ooh' and 'ah.'" "But what's the use of that?" said the great emperor. "I asked for inventions that are useful, not some stupid little thing that makes you make funny noises. Thank you, and goodbye. Next." "Just try it," said the man. "Oh, if I must," said the great emperor crossly. And he picked up the kaleidoscope, he twisted it, moved it, and he looked through it. And when he saw all the colours of the rainbow glowing in there, and when he saw all those patterns changing over and over again, he said, "Ooh!" And then he said, "Ah!" And then as he went on looking through it and changing the patterns, he said, yes, it's very nice, but what's it for? Is it useful?" And the man who had invented the kaleidoscope said, "Well, if you think about it, it's very useful. People go all over the world to look for things like the Grand Canyon or the Eiffel Tower, so that when they see them, they'll say, 'Ooh!' and 'Ah!' With this invention, you won't have to move out of your chair. And whenever you feel like a quick 'ooh' or a quick 'ah,' you take it out, look through it, twist it about a bit, and there you are." But the great emperor wasn't listening. He was too busy looking through the world's first kaleidoscope and saying, "Ooh!" and "Ah!" Later, much later, the man won 3,500 chocolate biscuits. Well, that's how the story goes. It may or may not be true. Nasty. Custard's last stand. Warning. This is a horror story. I like big hamburgers. There are all different kinds of burgers you can get, aren't there? You know, there's McDonald's, Burger King, Sizzles. We got one round our way. I forgot what it's called. Biggie Burgers or something. Anyway, I was sitting there the other day at the window just by the bus stop, and there outside, standing in the queue, was the Bakerloo Flea woman. I banged on the window and everyone seemed to look except her. I pointed at her to make the man next to her tell her that someone wanted her. She turned, saw me and waved, and I waved and went back to my Biggie Burger and was busy munching away when suddenly there she was. "Ah, well, I might just as well wait for that bus in here," she says. "How are you keeping, old son?" "I'm fine," I said. "Fine. How about yourself?" "Oh, nothing to complain of," she said. "I got the dodgy knee, mind, but there you go. You can't win 'em all, can you?" "What's that you're eating?" she said. "Oh, I don't know. It's a Biggie Burger or something," I said. "You eat them, do you?" she said.
Sure I do, I love 'em. Huh. You wouldn't if you knew what was in 'em, she says. What are you talking about? It says here, look, on the menu, 100% beef. Beef, right? Oh well, that's what it says. Got to believe them, haven't you? She said, and then she laughed. Yeah. Now hold it, I said. What are you telling me? No, nothing, love. For all I know, your Biggie beef burger is 100% beef. Thank you, I said. On the other hand, for all I know, something else, she said. Like what? Oh, no, nothing. What are you saying then? I said. Well, I used to work in one of these here places, you know, she says. When was this? I said. Oh, years ago now, she said. Before McDonald's, before Wimpy's even. This is years ago. There was a fella in the West End who opened up a place called the Yum Yum Burger Bar. He had it all decked out like a kind of Wild West saloon with wanted posters all over the walls, pictures of old-time cowboys like Wyatt Earp and Buffalo Bill and film stars like John Wayne stuck up all over the shop. I didn't mind that so much, but we all had to get up in Wild West outfits and all. People on the till, the cooks, the washers up, even the cleaners, would you believe? I think some of the fellas actually liked it. Swaggering about with toy pistols by their side, thinking they were off for a shootout every time they emptied the rubbish bins. Well, what were you wearing then? I said. Oh, me? Well, I told them I wasn't wearing one of them silly gingham frock things, so they said I could be a stable girl. I just wore a khaki shirt and trousers. Oh, yeah. Blessed boots. I felt like I was in the women's army most of the time. Oh, right. What was the food like? I said. The food, now you're talking. Well, you could have the Yum Yum Burger, the Yum Yum Rodeo, the Yum Yum Rancher, or the Yum Yum Roundup. Can you imagine grown-up people coming in off the streets of London, going up to some young lad from Dagenham or somewhere who just so happens to be dolled up in a white Stetson and saying, I'll have a Yum Yum Roundup, please. Ridiculous. And he had names for all the sauces and stuff. There was the Texas Tangy, Monument Valley Mix, and Colorado Crispy. In actual fact, they were all made in Manchester by the manager's brother-in-law. Well, what kind of man was this manager then? I said. Oh, the manager, him. His main trouble was his shirts were all too small. He had this pot belly in front of him and he was forever bursting out of it all over the shop. He came from Romford, but we used to call him General Custer. Oh no, actually General Custard. Oh no, the man was a villain. The place was a giant success, mind. He had John Wayne flown over specially to open it. It was Britain's first burger bar. For the first few months, the place was packed. It was open all hours. So some of us was working 12, even 16 hours a day. By the end of the day, your feet felt like a steamroller had run over them. And, oh, Lordy, you're back. Of course, he'd get young fellas wanting to work there who thought it was kind of glamorous to be selling Yum Yum Rodeos next to Leicester Square Station. He paid us under the rate because we had free meals. Yum Yum meals, morning, noon and night. Mind you, you didn't get any more money if you didn't have a Yum Yum meal. Now, this going on 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, Yum Yum burgers, breakfast, dinner, tea, supper. Something was bound to crack, wasn't it? I mean, Saturday nights you'd get invaded with people shouting and pushing. The heat in there was like Kew Gardens. I remember one time this drunk American coming in and he thought all the lads in their Stetsons and gumbelts were taking the mickey out of him. Say, kid, he was yelling, you take that 10-gallon hat off or I'll push you through that wall. One of the fellas, Titch, and he was small, was there going, what? Yeah, you what? And the American, he stands up and he's about 2 feet taller than Titch and he grabs Titch's Stetson, right, and tries to lift it off his head, but it's tied under Titch's chin, and he tugs it and he nearly yanks Titch's head off. This sends Titch spare. Next minute his fists are flaking against the American's belly. Now, I don't know whether it was out of shock or whether it says where Titch caught him, but then this American is all over Titch, fair and square. Oh my goodness, it was awful. Worse than a fight. There's people jumping up, rushing out, people screaming. This huge American guy standing there in his check shirt looking at the mess. And Titch, poor fella, I think he could have taken a slap round the chops, a punch in the eye, anything except that, all over him. And he just cried out of rage. Anyway, we pushed the American fella out the shop, but of course there was nowhere out the back for Titch to wash down or nothing. He went and hid in the toilet for the next 2 hours. He went home in an old overall with his hairy legs sticking out the bottom. I suppose the only good thing to come of it was knowing that Custard would have to buy Titch a new cowboy outfit. It was about this time some strange things started happening. One after another, we all went down with awful stomach pains. It was during a heat wave. If people thought when they came into Yum Yums they was coming deep into the heart of Texas, they could believe it. It was unbearable. And these stomach aches, you never had pain like this, son, I tell you. It felt like you'd swallowed a hedgehog. You didn't dare move, breathe or talk for fear that that hedgehog would go walking round your guts. We was all getting it. And you see, we couldn't take time off or nothing because Custard used to threaten us with the sack. So we were coming into work, serving Yum Yum roundups or whatever, in agony, complete agony. And all this with the heat as well. You imagine, General Custard, he used to tell us we had to look all cheery, so that when somebody said they wanted a Yum Yum rodeo or something, we were to smile at them and say things like, "Monument Valley mix goes well with that, sir." And then we were to say, "Apple shootout to follow, sir," and "Cowhand coffee," and all that to try and, make them spend more money, you see. But you try and do all that with a hedgehog going through your insides and the temperature in the 90s. Just even to look at one of those Yum Yum burgers frying on the hot plate was enough to turn your innards over. And you'd look up and you'd see rows and rows of people all biting into their Yum Yums, with the sauce dribbling down their chins. The mood in the place was awful. People serving up the stuff and rushing out their back for a you-know-what. It got to all of us, except Custard. He seemed fine. And you know, when you work in kitchens, in the heat, in cramped conditions, you don't wear much and you're always brushing past each other. It's like you're all working in a steam bath, a sauna or something. But when we come down with this gut rot, you couldn't bear for anyone to come anywhere near you. Your skin felt like it could only just about hold in your flesh, and the flesh was trying to get out through the pores of your skin. I remember once I was on kitchen duty and I was standing there with the pains going from front to back, top to bottom. The sweat was pouring off me, and Rosetta walked in with a pile of raw Yum Yums, and she dumped some there, right down there next to the hot plate. And I don't know what it was, but at that moment it was like I heard a voice in my ear that said, "Those Yum Yums, dodgy." I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the first time I'd ever seen them all together in a big heap like that, because normally I was out the front doing the tables. So, as I had a second, and as people weren't shouting for me to fetch, carry, wash and wipe, I went over and looked at this great pile of raw Yum Yums. I don't know whether you know, but meat goes brown when it gets old and it gets kind of dry and shrunk. Well, these Yum Yums look like bits of mouldy cardboard. And then I took a whiff of them. It wasn't a particularly strong smell, but when you got in close and really stuck your nose in there, it smelt like the inside of a broken fridge full of food. It was repulsive. So, of course, I got to thinking about all this. Could the famous, the great, the fabulous Yum Yum burgers be giving us this awful gut ache? At first, I thought no, because thousands of people coming into the Yum Yum burger bar would all have gone down with it, wouldn't they? Then again, I thought, most of the people that come into Yum Yums were one-offs. They were people passing through. You know, they'd seen John Wayne on telly opening the place, and so they'd promised their kids a visit there when they next come to London. Maybe just one yum-yum wasn't enough to give you the collywobbles, or the hedgehogs, as I was calling them by now. Then the awful Grace business happened. Grace was a dear old soul. She was one of those old dears who walk round the place with all they own in polythene bags, yeah? And she didn't have anywhere to live. In summer, she slept in shop doorways, stuffed newspaper up her jumper, got into a cardboard box and dozed off like that. She used to feed the birds in the park. The kids told me that she used to put bread on her lips, and the birds would come and chup, 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 and peck the bread out of her mouth. Well, old Grace, you see, she used to come into Yum-Yums. Now, of course, you can imagine old Custard, he couldn't stand her. She usually had enough money for a cup of tea or two, maybe, and then he'd make her sit in the back corner of the bar where no one could see her. And she used to sit and talk to herself, saying things like, "Oh, yeah, no, I told her where to put it. I ain't taking that from no one. Portsmouth's a beautiful place. I love Portsmouth. Nothing you can do about it, mind, you know." And she'd chunt her on like that for hours. Well, when Custard was out, meeting his mates in the cavalry or something, we used to slip her a quick yum-yum, and she used to sit and eat it like a half-starved camel. Well, Grace was a scavenger, spending her time combing through the bins outside the cafes. So it was while we were all going down with the hedgehogs during the heat wave, old Grace disappeared. She didn't come into the shop for a tea and a yum-yum on the side for a few days, and then suddenly one day the kids from the Golden Lantern Chinese came in saying Grace was stuck in a pipe. It was my dinner hour, so I told them to take me to see, and I followed them down an alley that went behind the shops, you know, where they pile up all the old crates, bottles and packing cases and stuff, and by the side of a shed there was some building stuff, bricks, gutters, drain covers, and a big concrete pipe, the kind they put in adventure playgrounds for kids to crawl through. Well, old Grace, she had crawled into this one and covered herself over with cardboard boxes like she usually does, right? And she was face down. Yeah? Her hair all sticky, with bits of paper and leaves stuck in it. "There," said one of the kids. "There she is." I knew immediately something was wrong. Even people asleep aren't that still and quiet. I bent down, moved her head. She was gone. Poor old Grace. Yes, she was. Her eyes half open, half shut, her face all grey, skin covered with tiny bits of like gravelly stuff off the concrete pipe. And then I saw her lips. Round her mouth was the dried up stains of Monument Valley mix. I nearly threw up. I covered her over with one of her bits of cardboard and I found myself crying over her, yeah? I mean, the two kids were standing there looking at me and at her, and I don't think they could believe it. I mean, they were shocked such a thing could happen to an old woman. So I told them not to worry, and I told the police. They didn't say anything else, but I can bet you they did when they got in. They had an old granny themselves who used to sit in the back in the Golden Lantern, and they knew for sure she wouldn't end up face down in a concrete pipe out the back of some shops. Of course, when I told the rest back at the ranch, everyone was very sad and all that, but no one asked how she died. I think people thought she was half dead anyway, and it could have been something she picked up off one of those birds she let feed off her lips. No one could possibly want to do her in for anything she got in her polythene bags. No, she died in her sleep, and it hadn't been cold. This was during the hot spell. Well, I was standing there telling Rosetta about old Grace, and I got that feeling again. It couldn't be the Yum-Yums, could it? And I suddenly felt kind of ashamed, as if I'd done her in by giving her Yum-Yums, killed her with kindness. I felt terrible. I mean, even more terrible, what with the stomach cramps and the heat and everything. I had to tell someone. Maeve, my great mate at Yum-Yums, was an Irish girl called Maeve. I've never seen anyone look so proper and yet come out with the things she did. She'd stand there looking so straight and calm looking, and she'd start talking about old Custard. Hell will be too nice a place for him. If only we had a few hundred Sioux Indians here. She got up to some tricks too. It was her who put the glasses and moustache on John Wayne's face on the poster on the wall in Yum-Yums. And I think it was her who changed the sign on the toilets. It said guys over one and dames over the other, but she put another notice over the top of guys, so it said horses. The next day, men were going out to the toilets and coming back into the bar saying, "Oi, where's the toilets in this place?" You should have seen Custard's face when he went out and had a look. You'd have thought someone had nicked his toy gun. Anyway, I told Maeve everything. I thought everything that I thought about the yum-yums and poor old Grace. Maeve had a think. She was very practical. "Well, my dear, we'd best find out where these yum-yum thingamies come from," she says. "The boxes that they came in, right, had no writing on at all, so that told us nothing. None of us ever got to see the books. Custard kept them locked away in his fort. The only thing to do was suss out delivery time. Junior was the lad who did the heavy stuff round the place, so Maeve and me nobbled him. "I'll check it out for you, babes," he said. I can't stand that babes business, but you don't complain when you're asking favours, do you? Well, that wasn't much use either. Junior said there was no name on the side of the truck and the driver had no uniform or anything, so that told us nothing. All the boxes were plain covered. We were stumped. Maeve and me sat at a table in our afternoon break next to John Wayne's legs up there on the wall, trying to figure out what to do. "I know," said Maeve. "Stow away." "Stow away," I said. "Where? Where?" "In the truck, of course, in the delivery truck," she said, and she was serious. She had a lovely way of looking at you, straight in the eye. "Stow away," she says. And I thought, why not? So this is how it happened. We told Junior to tell us when the next delivery was due, and we told him exactly what he had to do. About a week later, Junior comes rushing in. "I'm on an unloading job right now. If you've got plans, then now's the time." Custard was in his fort doing his paperwork, as he used to call it. Junior was unloading the boxes, so Maeve and me are hiding behind the back door waiting for Junior to give us the signal. We're waiting for him to get the driver, right, to get the driver into his cab. He does it, tips us the wink, and we're out the back door and into the back of the truck. Junior closes the doors, but he doesn't lock them. He bangs twice on the back. "OK, you're away," he shouts to the driver, and we were off. I couldn't believe we were doing it, sitting in the back of a truck going who knows where. And that Maeve, she's sitting there as calm as if she's on a bus. Well, heaven knows how long the trip was. Thing is, the driver, he had a little window at the back of his cab so that he could see into his truck. Of course, it was dark, but Maeve was forever sitting up and looking out, trying to make out where we were. She goes, "I think this is Wellsden." And then she goes, "I know where we are, Clapham," which is right over the other side of London. And then she goes, "We're in Hackney now, and that's right over the other side from Clapham, isn't it?" And all the time, there was this smell. The smell of old yum-yum burgers. Can you imagine? Locked up in prison with a mouldy yum-yum burger. Anyway, we drive on, right? And finally, the truck stops. The driver gets out. I stopped breathing. This is it, I thought. We're going to be found out now. He's going to open the doors, and here we are looking like a pair of spare lemons. We listened, and his footsteps went away. Where were we? "OK, girl," says Maeve. "What are we going to do?" "Well, let's take a look." And we opened the door just a little bit and peeped out. And we were in some kind of backyard. We could see it was piled high with old boxes, cardboard ones, wooden ones. And I was just about to open the door a bit more when a fella come out. So I pulled the door back. And I just had time to see him. He had an old white coat on. And it was covered in old blood. Spots, splodges and smears of it. And he had a box in his hand and he chucked it onto one of the piles and went back inside. "OK," I said, "it's now or never." And we jumped out the back of the truck, hopped across the yard and hid behind some of the boxes. I looked at Maeve's face. "Where are we, for heaven's sake?" she whispered. "Search me," I said. "Search me? Well, what is this place?" "I don't know," I said. And the yard, smelt like pig bins. Awful. Rotting dinners. "They don't make yum-yum burgers here, do they?" "Well, they don't make paper aeroplanes, do they?" And then I caught sight of something. It was a bit of paper sticking out between two boxes. I looked. It was what was written on it. George Watson and Sons Limited, Animal Disposal and Pet Food Supplies. And underneath was a little picture of a horse on a donkey standing side by side. Below this, right, it was printed like a bill with money, and I handed it to Maeve. That piece of paper said everything. Custard was buying up meat from a knacker's yard where they kill old donkeys and horses and stuff, and shipping it to turn into hamburgers instead of it going into pet food. He could be put away for this, says Maeve. All I could think of was poor old Grace. I just stared at that little tiny picture of the horse on the donkey. And then Maeve was in there with, "Hey, have a look at this, will you?" And it was another one of those bits of paper. And on this one it said, Outback Foods Limited, Russ Mackie, Sydney, Australia. And on this one, there's a little black and white picture as well. And cross my heart, sure to die, if it isn't a picture of a blessed kangaroo. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. We were standing in the backyard of a place where dead horses, donkeys and kangaroos went in and hamburgers came out. Amazing. We had blown Custard's whole little game. The truck with nothing written on the side, the plain cardboard boxes, everything blown with 2 bits of paper. For Maeve, though, that wasn't enough. We've got to get a closer look at this place. And she pointed to the side of the building. There was a row of dirty little windows all along the wall by some bins and plastic bags and stuff, right? We made a dash for it so as not to be spotted and got to the side of the building. And Maeve climbed up onto one of the bins and looked in. "What can you see?" I asked. She didn't answer. Next, she climbed down from the bin and her face was white, like all the colour had been wiped out of it. Well, I was just about to climb up on the bin myself, but looking at her face, it kind of held me back for a moment. Then out the corner of my eye I saw something move. Coming round the end of the building was one of those men in their white overalls covered in blood. "He's got a meat axe in his hand," Maeve shouts, and we ran. We belted down the alley by the side of the building, and at the end there was this fence right in front of us. We looked back, and the bloke with the meat axe was climbing over the bins, coming for us. Then Maeve took one more look at the fence, and then kicked. She gave about 3 big kicks, and a panel in the fence fell out. She shoved me through, climbed through herself, and we were in someone's backyard. This awful place backed onto someone's house. Just imagine it, living next door to somewhere that they mashed up dead donkeys. Standing in the backyard was an old fella looking at his pigeons. Well, he had been looking at his pigeons before we burst in. By the time we got there, the pigeons were all around him and he was staggering back with them flying all over the place. We didn't give him time to see anything else. Maeve pushed me down this alley beside the house and we ran down there through this little gate and into the street. By now I was thinking, there could be 2 of them after us, the fella with the meat axe and the fella with the pigeons. Well, I tell you, I didn't dare look over my shoulder. Down the street we went, running hell for leather, round the corner, and there was a row of shops. The first was a junk shop. We took one look at it and we were in. There we were, panting for all our worth, pretending to look at old electric fires. Yeah, really good. And second-hand comics. Oh, yeah. I was dying to run round and look through that window. Any second now, I imagined I'd see 2 men running past with pigeons and meat axes flying round them. "Whew! Well, after that," said the Bakerloo flea woman, "there's not much more to tell you." "What do you mean?" I said. "What I said. You know everything now," she says. "Well, no, hang on," I said, "hang on. Did anyone catch you?" "Oh, no, they never caught us. I wouldn't be here to tell you if they had, would I?" she said. "And you never told me what Maeve saw through the window." "Do you know," she said, "I've never found out. Maeve never told me. Oh, many's the time I asked her, but she never said. I've just had to imagine it." "And what about the Yum Yum Burger Bar?" "Ah, well," said said the Bakerloo flea woman. The day after we got back to Yum Yums, we told everyone, before Custard swaggered in at his usual time. There was talk all over the place about what to do, police, the health people, everything. A walkout maybe by all of us. Well, while all this was going on and people were shouting and getting excited all over the place, Maeve was writing all over the walls and windows with a whacking great felt tip pen, things like, "Don't touch the donkey burgers," and "We serve kangaroo burgers here." Can you imagine Custard's face when he walked in that morning? It was a case of Custard's last stand. You remember? Old General Custard was the bloke who was surrounded by Indians and finished off. We told him we weren't working another minute in this place till the Yum Yums had been looked at. So there was nothing he could say to that. And it wasn't long before our General Custard was surrounded by the council health people. Yeah, the place was closed down. And that was that. The Bakerloo flea woman looked at me and she said, "Yeah, I was up that way a month ago. The shop where it was is some sort of video place now. And do you know what was in the window? You'll never guess. A big poster of True Grit, yeah, with a giant picture of John Wayne standing there. I could have died." "Don't say that," I said, and looked at my hamburger. But she wasn't listening. "Oh, there's my bus," she said, and before I could say goodbye or anything else, she was out the door and away, and I took one more look at my hamburger. I don't think I'll finish that just now, I thought. And I walked out the shop into the high street.
Now, it would be great if you subscribed. That is, you become a subscriber. Look out for the subscribe button. What happens, you see, is that I make new vids every few months, and then I post them up one a week. So if you subscribe, you get to see the new ones just as they come hot off the press. Ew.